And I want to thank everybody who did this with me: Melissa, Matt, Mike, Andrew, Lindsay, Derek, Joe, and Aaron. Thanks for indulging me and doing the show with me. And I'm going to do a reading from a novel that I wrote. It's not the same thing that's I released today. Y'all already know about that. It's on the internet. So let's do it. Everything screamed of the post-apocalyptic. What appeared to have once been a burgeoning city and center of civilization had been reduced to a barren wasteland. Previous roadways had transformed into slivered gorges, slicing through mounds of crumbled skyscrapers, all smothered by a thick amber haze. The two of them made their way down one of the gulches. To navigate the hostile environment, they each had their own walking vehicle, a heavily armed and armored mecha. Standing almost 50 meters tall, each humanoid robot was operated from a cockpit located in its head. Despite such a high vantage point, they could not see beyond the enormous surrounding piles of ruin, ascending hundreds of meters into the nebulous sky. As they approached a major crossroads with former streets ahead, she and her mecha stopped. He did the same, waiting for her to deliver an assessment. "Brace up! I can't tell where the fuck they're hiding, but that intersection up there, that's where they're going to try and ambush us. You flank right, I'll flank left. Cross by and keep sharp," she said. "Right, but what if they split us?" he asked. "How many times do I have to tell you? I'm points, you drop my flank. Get your fucking head in the game, you're going to get us killed." He nodded. The two of them split apart, hugging opposite sides of the ravine. With each nudge forward, he had a better angle of sight across the intersection ahead. But as he crept along, staying close to the pile of rubble on his right, gripping his mecha's controller so tight he could feel calluses forming, everything in his vision lay motionless, except the drifting puffs of smoke from the scorched refuse. He took another step. Immediately, he heard shots ring out and felt his mecha shake. Firing his weapons in random directions ahead, he attempted to navigate backwards, but was unable to get out of his enemy's line of sight before a few homing rockets connected with him. Although the explosions knocked his mecha back with great force, he kept it from tumbling over. "Cover me," she said, sprinting ahead toward the intersection. A firefight ensued. After engaging the source of his ambush, she discovered other threats, and by the time he moved into a support position, enemy fire already pounded her. The sounds of conflict rang out and echoed across the artificial canyon, disorienting him as he marched toward the intersection and fired without aim. Ahead, her mecha scurried away from the intersection as he approached it. Before he could make out the origin of any attack, he was besieged by two men to defend. This time his mecha could not maintain balance, and the enormous robot toppled to the ground. After failing in his first attempt to get back up, he piloted his mecha to his feet in time to receive another barrage of enemy fire. Away from the ambush he sprinted, sirens wailing inside his cockpit, warning the armored suit was badly damaged. As soon as he ducked behind a wall of rubble, he turned back around and discovered her engaged in another intense battle, losing. He kicked his leg to propel the mecha forward, but before he even had a chance to respond, a gigantic explosion erupted. Her mecha burst into flames and fragmented in the fiery shrapnel. She was gone. Without even a second to collect his thoughts, he was attacked yet again. This time, two opposing mechas had come around the corners of the intersection, and both discharged endless rockets at him. He fired everything he had at his enemies, but there was no way that he could take them both out before they defeated him. An explosion thundered and a burning sensation devoured all of his senses. His body broke apart into pieces, shattering in every direction, the pain unbearable. He screamed, "Ah!" But then, as if someone pushed a button, the pain evaporated, wiping out all of his sensory perception until a vivid white light engulfed his vision. After seconds elapsed, the white faded and gave way to a deep sky blue. When the rest of his senses returned, he found himself lying down on a rather comfortable surface. Sitting up, he discovered that the blue he stared at was indeed the sky. Rolling white sand surrounded by an ocean of sparkling waves sprawled out around him. Further observation revealed that he lay in a beach chair, and that she sat in a similar chair beside him, wearing sunglasses and a bikini with a bright pattern. Perched upon her chair, beside her arm, was a vermilion-colored parrot. After hearing some noises, he beheld a flock of gulls swooping around about 10 meters above. The scarlet birds flew around, squawking harmoniously, forming and reforming into new symmetrical patterns. He fixated on the spectacle above. But then, her laughter interrupted. "You know you just fucked us, right?" she said. "Fuck, actually dying can't feel worse than that." "Yeah, thanks." "I don't remember this room," he said. "It's a new one I picked up. I got tired of the castle thing we were using. This one is called the Ruby Island, but there's no rubies. It's not as cool as I thought it would be." "I think it's pretty cool. It's beautiful. I swear we're really sitting on the beach of a deserted island." "Well, you're easily deceived as always. I seriously can't play Mechageddon with you as my partner ever again. It's embarrassing. That game fucking cheats." "Sure, whatever. Let's get blotto." She reached her left arm in the air and wiggled her fingers. As he watched her hand movements, he caught a glimpse of some more tropical birds flying in from afar. Their lemon and lime hues were striking, cutting through the deep sapphire background. The new birds approached the nearby flock, and they all joined together, creating an intricate pattern above the island. Half rotated clockwise and half rotated counterclockwise, the birds coordinated the large oval formations overhead. "The drugs have arrived," she said. After looking over to see her grin, he noticed some movement in the peripheral of his vision. Leering ahead, he could make out two figures, knee-deep in ocean water, walking toward the shore. The figures, one a man and the other a woman, were both well-tanned. Wearing flowery patterned bathing suits, each carried a drink on a tray. He watched as the two figures broke apart, and the female figure sauntered over to the right of his chair. With a tiny umbrella hanging on top, the beverage that the woman's silhouette carried glowed a shade of violet, pulsating ever so slightly. The female figure held the tray and the drink within his grasp like a waitress, and she smiled reassuringly as he reached out for the glass. "Thanks," he said with a magic smile. The figure did not respond. "They're just empties," he heard from his left, followed by a slight giggle. He looked over and said, "I know." "Sure you do," she said, laughing harder as she snatched the libation from the male silhouette standing by her. Then both figures turned around and returned to the water. The woman and man, side by side, waded deeper and deeper until they disappeared behind a large breaking wave. He held the transparent cup close to gaze at the subtle undulating glow of the liquid within. It mesmerized him. He took the umbrella off the glass and set it down on the sand beside his chair. As he did, the cool sand caressed his hand. Engrossed in curiosity, he ran his fingers through the grains of sand and grabbed a tiny handful. After releasing the clump, he found many of the grains stuck to him, so he used his thumb to rub the remaining granules off his fingers. Leaning up, he took a swig from his drink, and as soon as the liquid hit his throat, a wave of pleasure consumed him. An electric field welled up from within and coursed through his body, overloading every sensor with pure bliss. As the sensation continued to rush through his body, he tried to focus on it and found the feeling too overwhelming for concentration. Once it subsided a little, he realized that he still clung to his glass, so he took another gulp. The next burst of pleasure overtook him, and he closed his eyes to brace himself. Breathing deep breaths and exhaling with a slow rhythm, he felt as if his body was submerged, drowning in a lake of happiness. As the effects again marginally waned, he perceived a hand massaging his chest, leading him to realize that she had climbed on top of him and began kissing his neck. "Fuck, this feels so good. She passionately kissed him on the lips, and they both grabbed onto each other's bodies and started to massage. After a few minutes, she sat up to chug the rest of her beverage and stared straight into the air. Turning his eyes upward to where she gazed, he noticed thousands of birds of every imaginable color flew around in even more complex formations and patterns than before. "I love this room. Entranced by the visual spectacle, he downed the rest of his beverage and sat back to observe the show. His consciousness merged with his subconscious. He listened as each bird communicated with the others near it, and it was as if he understood every single chirp. The sounds blended together into melodies and harmonies that felt so familiar. It all seemed like it came from within him. The sound, the shape, the motion, everything. He realized realized each pattern the birds formed was from inside his own mind. Each microchange inside his brain was reflected by the birds. Everything they constructed was burned into his thoughts to reveal answers to any question that came to his mind. Each new thought he had was met with a new pattern sound that accompanied it perfectly. Thought, to color, to shape, to new thought, circle, upon infinity seen within his grasp. He had enveloped the entire universe inside himself and decoded its every secret in the velocities of red, yellow, and green. His mind raced across thought after thought until it extended every function his brain was capable of, and every possibility had been calculated. I see it! I do it! Okay, I'm bored now. Let's get out of the dirt and do something more real, she said, shattering his loop of introspection. Had it been minutes, hours, or days, he couldn't tell. He sat back and saw the sun, swollen and pink, setting on the horizon in a gathering of clouds assembled for the sole purpose of making the sunset even more vibrant. Just above the horizon, the glowing ball hung above the scene for a few minutes before it sank, leaving only lavender and amethyst clouds above, floating quickly across the water and transforming into amorphous shapes. Turning toward the opposite direction of the sunset, he watched his shimmering stars pop up against the darkening sky, and he could make out red and orange nebulae materializing. I really love this room, he said. Yeah, it's okay, she replied, but now it's time to get in some fucking trouble. Let's go. He took in the scene one last time before reaching up and wiggling his fingers. His stomach tightened as he experienced the sensation of falling for an instant, and his entire body stiffened. His neck twitched, and his vision went black. He opened his eyes to see a gray ceiling with soft light reflecting from lamps along the sides of the room. Again he found himself lying down, but this time in an inclined chair conformed to his body. As he stepped down and stood, she climbed out of her own nearby chair. I'll go lock things up, meet you at the dock, she said to him before walking off. Feeling stiff for remaining still for so long while connected to the vert, he decided to stretch. His elbows cracked upon extension and his back popped when he reached for his toes. He walked over to a corner of the dull gray room to grab his jacket harness from a coat rack. After a long gulp of water from a clear bottle on a table beside the rack, he was on his way. All right, y'all, thanks for coming out, and stick around for ambulances. They're up next.